The deafening thump of bass greeted me as I trudged up the driveway, my scrubs drenched in sweat after a grueling double shift. Exhaustion weighed on my shoulders, but the thumping music sent a jolt of dread through my veins. I flung open the front door to a scene of utter chaos. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted over the blaring music, taking in the crowd of teenagers spilling out of the living room, red cups sloshing with suspicious liquids. Lucas, my 16-year-old stepson, swaggered into view, a cocky grin plastered on his face. "Welcome home, Ava," he mocked, his eyes glazed with defiance. "We're just having a little party." "A party?" I snapped, my fingers digging into my palms. "You know the rules, Lucas. No gatherings without permission, especially when your father and I are at work." His lip curled into a sneer. "Oh, forgive me for not following the orders of the maid my dad married for her money." Now the jab stung like a slap across the face. I drew in a sharp breath, fighting the urge to retaliate. "Everyone out, now!" I bellowed, pointing toward the door. Lucas scoffed, unfazed by my authority. "Or what? You'll call the cops on me?" He turned to his friends, raising his voice. "Hey guys, let's show Ava here how we treat gold diggers in this house." The crowd erupted in jeers and laughter, their taunts piercing my ears. I gritted my teeth, refusing to be intimidated by a pack of drunken teenagers. "That's it," I growled, pushing past Lucas to grab my phone. "I'm calling your father, and we'll see what he has to say about this." Lucas snatched the phone from my hand, his face contorted with rage. "You're not ruining this for me, you pathetic." His words were cut off by the sound of shattering glass as the phone slipped from his grasp, smashing against the hardwood floor. A hush fell over the room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Lucas met my gaze, his eyes burning with contempt. "Oops," he muttered, a twisted grin spreading across his face. In that moment, the weight of my fatigue melted away, replaced by a simmering fury. I stepped closer, our faces inches apart, and spoke in a low, measured tone. "Clean this up, now, or I'll make sure you regret ever setting foot in this house again." Lucas held my stare for a few seconds before turning away, waving his hand dismissively. "Whatever. Party's over, losers. Get out." As the crowd dispersed, grumbling and shuffling towards the exits, I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The harsh reality of my fractured family settled over me like a suffocating weight. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance for Ethan and me to build a life together. But with each passing day, Lucas's resentment grew stronger, threatening to tear us apart from the inside. I had no idea how to reach him anymore. But one thing was certain. If I didn't find a way to bridge the divide, the consequences would be devastating. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, the events of the previous night weighing heavily on my mind. As I made my way downstairs, the shattered remains of my phone lay scattered across the living room floor, a bitter reminder of Lucas's escalating defiance. Ethan was already in the kitchen, dressed in his usual crisp suit, sipping coffee while scrolling through his tablet. He glanced up as I entered, his brow furrowing at the sight of my disheveled appearance. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone tinged with concern. I sighed, sinking into the chair across from him. "You could say that. Lucas threw a party while we were gone." Ethan's expression darkened. "Again? I thought we made it clear that wasn't acceptable." "I did too," I said, my voice strained. "But when I got home, the house was packed with his friends, drinking and making a mess. When I tried to put a stop to it, Lucas—" I trailed off, the memory of his cruel words still stinging. "What did he do?" Ethan pressed, setting down his tablet. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "He called me a gold digger, said I only married you for your money." Ethan's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. "That's completely unacceptable. I'll have a talk with him." "That's not all," I continued, my voice trembling. "He smashed my phone when I tried to call you. Ethan, I don't know what to do anymore. Lucas is out of control, and the way he treats me—" I blinked back tears, hating how weak I sounded. Ethan reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "Hey, look at me. We'll get through this, okay? Lucas is just going through a phase. He'll come around." I shook my head, unconvinced. "You didn't see the way he looked at me, Ethan. It was like pure hatred. And the things he said—" I shuddered, remembering the venom in Lucas's voice. Ethan squeezed my hand reassuringly. "I'll talk to him. Maybe it's time we consider disciplinary measures, like counseling or... His phone buzzed, and he glanced down at the screen, his expression darkening further. Damn it, it's the office. I have to take this. He rose from the table, planting a kiss on my forehead. We'll figure this out, I promise. As Ethan stepped into the next room, his voice fading into a muffled murmur, I couldn't shake the feeling that our family was teetering on the brink of collapse. Lucas's hatred for me ran deeper than mere teenage rebellion. It was a festering wound, poisoning our household with each passing day. And as much as I loved Ethan, his constant absence and unwavering belief that Lucas would come around only enabled our son's destructive behavior. If we didn't take drastic action soon, I feared the consequences would be irreparable. Later that day, as I was cleaning up the remnants of the party, I made a chilling discovery. A crumpled piece of paper stuffed behind the couch, covered in crude drawings and vile insults directed at me. My hands trembled as I smoothed out the paper, my eyes tracing the hateful words scrawled in Lucas's unmistakable handwriting. It was then that I realized the truth. Lucas wasn't just going through a phase. He was waging a war against me, and I was losing ground with every passing day. That evening, I decided to confront Lucas about the disturbing letter I'd found. As I approached his bedroom door, I could hear the muffled sounds of a video game leaking through the walls. I knocked firmly, steeling myself for another confrontation. Go away, Lucas's voice barked from inside. I took a deep breath, willing my hands to stop shaking. Lucas, it's Ava. We need to talk. A moment of silence, then the sound of his footsteps stomping towards the door. It flew open, revealing his scowling face. What do you want? I held up the crumpled paper, my heart pounding. Care to explain this? Lucas's eyes widened briefly before narrowing into slits. Where did you get that? I found it behind the couch, I replied evenly. The things written here, they're vile, Lucas, completely unacceptable. He snatched the paper from my hands, his lips twisting into a sneer. Oh, did I hurt the gold digger's feelings? Boo-hoo. My temper flared, but I fought to keep my voice steady. This hostility needs to stop, Lucas. I'm your stepmother, and I deserve to be treated with respect. Lucas barked out a humorless laugh. Respect? You want respect after you weaseled your way into my dad's life and bank account? That's not what happened, I shot back, my hands balling into fists. Your father and I love each other. Sure you do, Lucas scoffed. Just like my mom loved all those guys she dragged through our lives after the divorce. His words hit like a physical blow, dredging up memories I'd tried desperately to bury. I staggered back, momentarily winded. Lucas's eyes glinted with malice, sensing an opening. Yeah, that's right. I know all about your trashy past, Ava. The crappy apartments, the string of deadbeat boyfriends. Is that the kind of life you were hoping to buy your way out of by marrying my dad? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Tears stung my eyes as the weight of his accusations settled over me. Cat got your tongue? Lucas sneered. Here's the deal. You keep your mouth shut about this letter, and I'll keep my mouth shut about your sleazy history. Otherwise... He trailed off, letting the threat hang in the air. My stomach churned with a sickening combination of anger and dread. Lucas had me cornered, and we both knew it. If Ethan learned about my troubled past, my marriage, my entire life, could crumble. You're bluffing, I managed, hating how small my voice sounded. Lucas's grin widened, feral and cruel. Try me. With that, he slammed the door in my face, leaving me shaking and utterly defeated in the hallway. As the tears finally spilled over, I realized the bitter truth. My stepson wasn't just a troubled kid acting out. He was a ticking time bomb, and I had just handed him the detonator. In the days following Lucas's chilling threat, a heavy cloud of dread hung over me. Every interaction with Ethan was tainted by the fear that Lucas would unleash my sordid past like a ticking time bomb, obliterating the life I'd worked so hard to build. I found myself walking on eggshells, second-guessing every word and action around my stepson. The once warm household had become a minefield, each glance and remark from Lucas carrying the weight of an unspoken ultimatum. One evening, as Ethan and I sat down for a rare family dinner, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lucas stabbed at his food, his jaw clenched in a permanent scowl. Ethan cleared his throat, breaking the oppressive silence. I wanted to talk to you both about something. Lucas rolled his eyes but remained silent, while I felt my pulse quicken with apprehension. "There's been some issues at the firm," Ethan continued, his brow furrowed. "Allegations of misconduct, shady business dealings, that sort of thing." My heart plummeted. Ethan's prestigious law firm was his pride and joy. If it was embroiled in scandal, the consequences could be devastating. "That's messed up," Lucas muttered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'd hate to be associated with anything shady." The pointed remark wasn't lost on me, and I shot him a warning glare. Ethan, however, seemed oblivious to the undercurrent of hostility. "Yes, well, these are just allegations at this point," he said, rubbing his temples warily. "But they're complicated, and it's put me in a difficult position." "How so?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Ethan let out a heavy sigh. "The firm's been receiving anonymous tips, documents that allegedly tie some of our clients to illegal activities. Money laundering, fraud, you name it." Lucas perked up, a glint of interest flickering in his eyes. "Anonymous tips? From who?" "That's what we're trying to find out," Ethan said grimly. "Whoever's behind this is determined to bring the firm down, and they're using some unorthodox methods." A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach as realization dawned. The anonymous tips, the illegal activities, it all reeked of the cyberbullying incident Lucas had been involved in. Could he be connected to this scandal as well? As if sensing my suspicion, Lucas shot me a pointed look, his expression a silent warning. "What are you going to do?" I asked Ethan, my voice strained. He shook his head, his shoulders sagging. "Damage control, for now. But if these allegations gain traction—" He trailed off, the unspoken consequences hanging heavily in the air. After dinner, as Ethan retreated to his study to make calls, I cornered Lucas in the hallway. "Are you behind those anonymous tips?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. Lucas's lips curved into a smug grin. "Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. But if I were you, I'd be more worried about keeping my own skeletons buried." With a final contemptuous glance, he brushed past me and disappeared into his room, leaving me reeling in the wake of his veiled threat. As the gravity of the situation settled over me, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I could remain silent, allowing Lucas's escalating campaign of vengeance to consume my family. Or I could take a stand, risking the exposure of my past in order to protect Ethan and put an end to my stepson's reign of terror. The choice should have been simple. But as I wrestled with the potential consequences, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what path I chose, everything was about to change. In the days following Ethan's revelation about the firm's scandal, an uneasy truce settled over our household. Lucas remained sullen and withdrawn, his interactions with me limited to furtive glances and loaded silences. Meanwhile, Ethan was increasingly consumed by the mounting crisis at work, spending long hours hunched over his laptop or locked away in tense phone calls. The strain was starting to show on all of us. Ethan grew increasingly haggard and irritable, while Lucas seemed to revel in the chaos, his smug demeanor a constant reminder of the threat he held over me. It all came to a head one evening when I overheard a raised voice coming from Ethan's study. Concerned, I crept closer, straining to make out the words. "Anonymous source has evidence tying us to Palmetto Holdings." Ethan's muffled voice filtered through the door. "Alleged money laundering, fraud, the works." My blood ran cold. Palmetto Holdings was one of the firm's most high-profile clients, a real estate conglomerate with ties to some of the city's most powerful players. If they were implicated in illegal activities, the fallout could be catastrophic. "We need to get ahead of this," Ethan continued, his tone urgent. "Find the source, bury this thing before it destroys everything we've built." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "Wait, you can't be serious. Involving them?" "That's playing with fire, Ethan." My curiosity piqued. I leaned closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. "I don't have a choice," Ethan said grimly. "They have the resources, the connections to make this go away. Discreetly." A chill ran down my spine. From the cryptic conversation, it sounded like Ethan was considering enlisting some dangerous allies to quash the growing scandal, allies with enough power and influence to make problems go away through nefarious means. As I stood there, rooted to the spot, the gravity of the situation crystallized in my mind. Lucas's veiled threats, the anonymous tips decimating Ethan's firm, it was all part of a calculated campaign of revenge against our family. And now, in a desperate bid to salvage his legacy, Ethan was poised to make a potentially catastrophic decision that could put us all in harm's way. In that moment, I knew I had to act. No matter the cost, no matter the risk of exposing my own past, I couldn't allow Lucas's vendetta to consume us all. It was time to make a choice: protect my family or protect myself. With a steadying breath, I turned on my heel and marched towards Lucas's room, my fists clenched with determination. Enough was enough. I pounded on his door, the sound reverberating through the hallway. "Lucas, open up, we need to talk." There was a shuffling noise from inside. Then the door swung open, revealing my stepson's sneering face. "What do you want?" I stepped forward, invading his space, my voice low and measured. "I know you're behind those anonymous tips. I know you're trying to take down your father's firm." Lucas's eyes widened briefly before narrowing into slits. "You don't know anything." "Don't play dumb with me," I hissed. "Your little revenge scheme has gone too far. Your father is considering making deals with dangerous people to make this go away." A flicker of surprise crossed Lucas's features, but he quickly regained his composure. "So what? Maybe he should have thought about that before marrying a lowlife like you." White-hot anger surged through me, and I fought the urge to slap the smug look off his face. "That's enough. This ends now, Lucas. I'm telling your father everything about the cyberbullying, the threats, all of it." Lucas's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with fury. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I countered, echoing his own words back at him. "I'm done being intimidated by you. If you want to come clean and put an end to this, now's your chance. Otherwise, I'm taking you down with me." We stood there, locked in a tense standoff, the air crackling with barely contained rage. Finally, Lucas broke the silence with a low, menacing chuckle. "You think you've won? You're just getting started, Ava. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you never set foot in this family." With that, he slammed the door in my face, the impact rattling the walls. My heart pounded in my ears as I absorbed the weight of his threat, the promise of a reckoning yet to come. As I turned and headed towards Ethan's study, my footsteps heavy with dread, I knew I had crossed a point of no return. The fragile facade of our family had shattered, and the only path forward was through the fire. With a trembling hand, I knocked on the study door, my heart pounding in my ears. This was it, the moment of truth that would either shatter or redeem my family. "Come in," Ethan's muffled voice called out. I steeled myself and pushed open the door, greeted by the sight of my husband hunched over his desk, his face etched with worry lines. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his features. "Ava, what's going on?" I drew in a shaky breath, willing my voice to remain steady. "We need to talk. It's about Lucas." Ethan's brow furrowed, and he straightened in his chair. "What about him?" "I know he's the one behind those anonymous tips," I blurted out, the words tumbling from my lips in a rush. "He's been waging some kind of vendetta against us, against me, for months now." Ethan's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to speak. But I barreled on, the dam finally bursting open. The cyberbullying incident, the threats, the constant hostility, it's all been part of his plan to tear us apart. And now with this scandal at your firm, he's taken things to a whole new level. Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "Slow down, Ava. What are you talking about? Lucas wouldn't do something like that." "Wouldn't he?" I countered, my voice rising. "Look at how he treats me, Ethan. The names he calls me, the things he says about my past. He's been holding that over my head for months, threatening to expose me if I got in his way." Ethan's expression hardened, and he rose from his chair, his hands clenched at his sides. "Are you telling me my son has been blackmailing you, and you didn't think to mention this sooner?" "I was trying to protect our family," I pleaded, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I didn't want to believe Lucas was capable of something like this, but the evidence is right in front of us. He's out of control, Ethan, and now he's putting your entire career at risk with these anonymous tips." Ethan shook his head, his jaw clenched. I can't believe this. My own son trying to destroy everything I've built." "We have to do something," I urged, stepping closer to him. "We can't let him get away with this anymore. It's gone too far." Ethan let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders sagging with the weight of my revelation. "You're right. As much as it pains me, we can't ignore this any longer." He moved to his desk and grabbed his phone, punching in a number with trembling fingers. "I'm calling the authorities." If Lucas is truly behind this, if he's been blackmailing and threatening you, he needs to face the consequences. As Ethan relayed the situation to the person on the other end of the line, I felt a mixture of relief and trepidation wash over me. The truth was finally out in the open, but the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty and potential heartbreak. When Ethan finally hung up, his expression was grim. "They're sending someone over to take our statements. We'll get to the bottom of this, Ava, no matter what." I nodded, steeling myself for the storm to come. "I'm sorry it had to come to this, Ethan. I never wanted to tear this family apart." Ethan stepped forward and pulled me into a tight embrace, his arms enveloping me with a sense of security I hadn't felt in months. "You did the right thing," he murmured into my hair. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." As we held each other in the eye of the gathering storm, I couldn't help but wonder what repercussions awaited us on the other side. Lucas's wrath had been unleashed, and there was no turning back now. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. The hours after my confession to Ethan passed in a blur of hushed voices and somber expressions. The authorities arrived, their grim-faced demeanor casting an ominous pall over our once happy home. As I recounted the months of escalating tensions, the threats and blackmail from Lucas, I could see the disbelief and anguish etched on Ethan's face. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the true depths of our son's malice and the fault lines fracturing our family. When the time came to question Lucas, Ethan insisted on being present, his jaw set in a tense line. I trailed behind, my stomach roiling with a mixture of dread and relief. Lucas answered the knock on his door with a defiant glare, his eyes flickering between us and the imposing figures of the authorities. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice laced with false bravado. Ethan stepped forward, his expression a mask of stern authority. "We need to talk, son. There have been some serious allegations made against you." Lucas's gaze shifted to me, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure venom. "I see, so the gold digger finally grew a backbone." "That's enough," Ethan snapped, his voice laced with a rare edge of anger. "We know about the anonymous tips, the blackmail. It stops now." For a brief moment, Lucas's cocky facade wavered and a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. But it was quickly replaced by a sneer of contempt. "So what if I did it?" he spat, squaring his shoulders defiantly. "That firm is a cesspool of corruption, just like this whole family." "How dare you?" Ethan growled, his hands clenching into white-knuckled fists. "Everything I've built, everything I've sacrificed, it was all for you, for our future." Lucas barked out a humorless laugh. "Our future? You're delusional, old man. This whole life is a sham, built on lies and dirty money." "And you," he rounded on me, his eyes blazing, "you're the biggest lie of them all." I flinched, his words like acid eating away at my resolve. Ethan stepped between us, shielding me from Lucas's vitriol. "I've heard enough," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. "These officers are here to take you in for questioning. If you're lucky, maybe some counseling can help you see the error of your ways before it's too late." Lucas scoffed, his lips twisting into a contemptuous sneer. "Counseling? You think that's going to fix this? You're both pathetic." As the officers moved to restrain him, Lucas lashed out with a sudden burst of violence, shoving one of them backward with startling force. In the blink of an eye, chaos erupted, with shouts and scuffling filling the air. I cried out, instinctively reaching for Ethan, my heart hammering in my chest. This couldn't be happening. Not to our family, not to the life we had built together. But as Lucas was wrestled to the ground, his face contorted in a mask of rage and defiance, the bitter truth became inescapable. The boy we had raised, the child we had loved and nurtured, was gone, replaced by a twisted, vindictive stranger hell-bent on our destruction. Ethan's arms tightened around me as we watched Lucas being hauled away, his curses and threats echoing down the hallway. In that moment, the weight of our shattered reality crashed down upon us, suffocating and inescapable. "I'm so sorry," I choked out, tears streaming down my face. "I never wanted it to come to this." Ethan's expression was one of utter desolation, a man stripped bare of his illusions and forced to confront the harsh light of truth. "Neither did I," he rasped, his voice thick with emotion. "But we can't run from this any longer. Lucas needs help, real help, before it's too late." As we clung to each other in the aftermath of our son's cataclysmic downfall, I couldn't help but wonder if Lucas had already ventured too far down the path of darkness to ever find his way back. And if he hadn't, if redemption was still possible, what price would we all have to pay to attain it? The days following Lucas's arrest were a blur of anguish and uncertainty. Ethan and I drifted through our once vibrant home like ghosts, the weight of our shattered illusions pressing down upon us. As the legal process unfolded, the full scope of Lucas's actions came to light. The cyberbullying, the anonymous leaks decimating Ethan's firm, and the depths of his hatred towards me. Each new revelation was a fresh wound, tearing open the fragile scabs we'd formed over our fractured family. Ethan threw himself into his work, burying his pain beneath endless files and damage control meetings. I knew he was struggling, grappling with the reality that the son he had loved and sacrificed for had become a stranger consumed by bitterness and rage. As for me, I found solace in the familiar rhythms of my nursing shifts, losing myself in the comforting routines of caring for others. It was a welcome reprieve from the turmoil that awaited me at home, where every room, every corner seemed haunted by the specter of our broken family. Eventually, the legal proceedings reached their conclusion, and Lucas's fate was sealed. He was sentenced to a year in a juvenile correctional facility, along with mandatory counseling and community service upon his release. The night before he was to be taken away, he requested to see us one last time. Ethan was hesitant, still raw from the betrayal, but I knew we needed this, one final opportunity to confront the demons that had torn us apart. Lucas was brought into the living room, his wrists shackled and his head hung low. Gone was the defiant sneer, the cocky bravado that had become his armor. In its place was a hollowed-out husk of a boy, his shoulders slumped beneath the weight of his actions. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, his voice strained. "I know this can't undo the damage, but I need to understand why, Lucas. Why did you do this to us? To your own family?" Lucas remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, laced with a weariness that seemed to age him beyond his years. "I was angry," he said, the words falling heavily. "At you, at Mom, at the whole world. When she left, when you moved on with Ava, it felt like a betrayal, like you were both just leaving me behind." He lifted his gaze, and the anguish in his eyes was like a physical blow. "I know it's not an excuse. What I did was unforgivable, but I was so consumed by my own hurt, my own rage, that I couldn't see anything else." Ethan pressed his lips into a tight line, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Son, if I'd known how you were feeling, how much you were struggling." Lucas shook his head, a rueful smile tugging at his lips. "Would it have made a difference?" "I was too far gone, Dad. Too wrapped up in my own twisted idea of revenge to listen to reason." His gaze shifted to me, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of genuine remorse in his eyes. "Ava, I don't know if I'll ever be able to make amends for the way I treated you, the things I said, the threats." He trailed off, swallowing hard. "I was a monster, plain and simple, and you didn't deserve any of it." I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, and I willed myself to hold his gaze, to meet the rawness of his confession with grace. "Thank you for your honesty, Lucas," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It won't be easy, but I want to believe that redemption is possible. For all of us." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, as if he hadn't expected such a merciful response. But it was quickly replaced by a resolute nod, a silent vow to walk the long road towards atonement. As the guards led him away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, I felt a weight begin to lift from my shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with healing and hard-won trust. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see a glimmer of hope peeking through the darkness. Ethan's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining with a familiar warmth. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them as we always had, together, stronger than the sum of our broken parts. It would be a long, arduous journey, but I knew in that moment that our family's legacy wouldn't be one of bitterness and revenge. It would be one of resilience, of hard-won redemption in the face of our darkest moments, and perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough to light our way forward.